very warm welcome to In the Craft Room with Julie. And I paused there because I can't remember which episode it is, but I thought it was about time I filmed another episode. I don't think I've done one for a while. And I'm actually quite excited about what I'm going to share with you today, because I'm about to start my next Book 6 project. Now, just a quick update, I am actually really behind with the book and I had hoped to have it released before Christmas this year, but that's not going to happen now. So I'm putting it back to next year, and I'm not going to say a date because I really don't know how long it is going to take. But what I'm actually about to do is start on my next project, which is going to be a two-seater sofa and armchair. Now, I originally made this sofa on YouTube. This was a YouTube tutorial. And since then, I've done a bit more of sort of upholstery work and made a few more chairs, a lovely sort of chaise longue, a Chesterfield sofa, and also a wing-backed armchair. And basically, I've got a little bit more experience now with upholstered projects, so I want to try and improve this sofa. So I'm really happy with the sort of base of it, the arms and the base, but it's these back cushions that I think could look a little bit better. So what I actually plan to do today, because I want to make two armchairs, I'm going to make a practice armchair, which I'll start today, and then the second armchair will actually be the book project, so where I'll take all of the photographs and everything, and then I'm going to remake the sofa. But with my practice armchair, and all I've cut so far are the arms, I'm going to sort of experiment with that back cushion. The bit I'm not really happy with is where it sort of tucks around the arm, so I want to try and improve the look of that and try to make the seat cushions perhaps look a little bit nicer as well. So what I'm going to do now is actually start cutting the pieces. And the other thing I want to do as well, I copied down the cutting list for the two-seater sofa from my original book, and I've just sort of estimated the cutting list for the chair. So rather than it just being half of the sofa, I'm just going to make this part, so the sort of central part, a tiny bit narrower, and only by 5mm, just to make the overall armchair a bit narrower, because if you add that and then the other arm, it makes it almost 4 foot wide, and an actual armchair would just be a little bit narrower than that. So that's another thing I want to do as well. Once I've built it, actually have a look and see, how it looks. Okay, so let me get my boxes of wood out and I can actually start cutting the pieces. So this is my 1.5mm sheetwood scrap box, and I'm getting really naughty with starting a new sheet when I start a new project, and what I really should be doing is using up all the smaller pieces. Now, this project will involve some sort of larger pieces. Well, I've got a few large bits in there, but it's something I'm really bad at, is just starting a new sheet, just because it seems quicker and easier than searching through for pieces out of the box. And as it sort of goes down, I'm just sort of having a look, the pieces do get, really quite small. Probably no need to have saved that, really. But yeah, I really must sort of start going through and using up some of the larger pieces when I'm cutting. Otherwise, I'm just going to start having to get rid of smaller bits out of this box. Let me know in the comments below what you do with all your little pieces of scrap. And if you even keep the sort of tiny pieces, or whether you're like me, you put them in a box, or whether you just sort of get rid of them. Okay, so I'm going to start with the arms. And another sort of thought I had for the cushions at the back was perhaps to make a base. I want to make a base anyway to cover, because I think it makes for a more sort of solid looking cushion. But I thought about perhaps using a thicker card for the curved sections rather than wood. Obviously for the front and back I'll have to cut a shaped piece of wood, but then I thought about just using card to feed around as the sides. you know, around here and along like that, because I also sort of ended up with ridges where I joined the fabric underneath. So that's another thing I want to have a think about as well. Yeah, I'd really like to sort of perfect my sofas and things. Okay, so 72. Yeah, so I actually need to cut 4 of each piece. I'm actually really looking forward to making the sofa, because also I'm going to be making it for the living room of my doll's house. So I've got some lovely red fabric, which I think I've already shown you in one of these In the Craft Room episodes. Lovely sort of deep red corduroy fabric. And then I'm not actually going to have an armchair in the living room, just because there's not really much space for one. But I shall have another chair in there, and I was thinking of remaking the, is it called I can't remember what it's called now, Berger style chair, you know, with the sort of canvas back and sides. So I may do a tutorial for that for the book as well, but rather than just repeating the one that I've already done on Patreon, I'll probably just change it up a little bit, maybe make the arms a different shape, or the back a different shape, and then just have a really nice seat cushion and some cushions on there, you know, just throw cushions. I think that might look quite nice, and it won't be quite as big and bulky as an armchair. So really looking forward to sort of getting started on that room as well. Okay, so I've got all of my pieces cut now for the armchair, and I'm going to begin gluing them together now. I'm not going to take photographs at this stage, but I have got my notepad here, and I am actually going to write out the steps as I go along, and then when I do come to take the photographs, that just makes it a lot easier, because I've actually got the steps to follow rather than sort of doing it, you know, at the same time. So I'm going to begin with my sides, just because I know that I'm happy with the shape and the size of the side pieces, and then I'll construct the base, and then I can get a better idea if it is actually going to be the correct size for the armchair. Okay, so let's see if I can remember how I did this the first time round. Okay, so I'm just popping in again with an update on the armchair. So I've got it to this stage, and I am actually really pleased with the proportions. So obviously the depth is the same as the sofa, but I like the width of that as well. So this part of the seat is just a little bit narrower than this. And although it looks a little bit long at the moment, if you imagine it with the cushions on, that sort of makes the depth seem a little bit less, because obviously we've got this back cushion blocking it off a bit. So that's why it looks a little bit sort of out of proportion. And despite what I said, I did actually start taking photographs for the book. It was just because it was really nice light in here, so I thought, well, I'll just take a few photos, and then I ended up photographing and writing down the steps for everything that I've done here. And just to give you an idea of how many photographs I take for the book, even though it ends up with just one per step, to get to this stage is 14 steps, and I actually took 205 photographs. And that's just with moving things around a little bit to get the best angles and the best lighting, and trying different settings on the camera, so that when I come to edit the book, I've got everything there that I need. But what I'm actually going to do now is start the upholstery. And I did actually just have a look back at that video for the sofa this morning, just watch the sort of upholstery bit. And I am going to do the back cushions and the seat cushions slightly differently. And I've already had a think about how I'm going to do them. But I'll get these sort of first bits of the chair upholstered, and then that gets sort of glued together, and then I make the cushions separately so that I can get an exact size for them. So I'll sort of keep dropping back in when I get to the next sort of significant stage. So I'll see you in a bit. Okay, so just stopping by then with a bit of an update, and as you can see I've covered the front of the seat part and the arms. Now this part of the arm is just actually for the piping, and then I'll be putting another piece of fabric around that I'm possibly going to line with foam first, just to give it that nice sort of plump look, and then I'll be putting that around there. And this is a really sort of good way of doing the piping, and if you're one of my patrons you would have seen me do that with my end of bench stool that I did as the last tutorial. And by folding the fabric you're getting that really nice sort of thick chunky look which looks like piping, rather than actually doing that afterwards. So I will be putting another piece of fabric around. What I was actually playing around with was using a coordinating fabric in this sort of central part. You've got your arm, and then you'd have maybe a checked piece or something here, or just a different colour, and then put in the sort of final piece around, and that creates a really nice effect. But the fabric I wanted to use as the cushions on my sofa, because I'm going to be doing 2 armchairs and a sofa, I haven't actually got enough of to do the piping as well. So I will just stick with the plain piping for now, but that's another really nice way of doing it. So what I've actually now discovered, and I probably shouldn't have covered this back piece until I'd sort of done these pieces, but I didn't think about it, was that this back piece now is going to be too wide. So once I've got another layer of fabric on the arms, and possibly with the foam, that's not going to sit in nicely. So that should sort of just go nicely in between those arms at the back there. So I'm going to have to cut that narrower and just really allow for a little bit more room for the fabric on the arms. I may have a go, I won't sort of take the fabric off or anything yet, or recut it until I've done that final covering on the arms. So I may be able to squeeze, really sort of squeeze it together and then clamp that to dry. Might, you know, it might work. But just as I was sort of going along, I'm thinking, well, I haven't allowed for the fabric. I've just sort of cut the sort of shape into this back piece for the bare arms, if you see what I mean. So that may need to change. But again, really good idea if you're sort of ever designing a piece of furniture to do a prototype like this, because you do sort of discover all these little bits that you need to do slightly differently. But even just sort of looking at that through the camera now without the cushions on, I think that already looks like quite a nice chair. And this fabric as well, this sort of fine cord, got a sort of spare piece here. It's like a corduroy, but very, very fine, and it's got a slight stretch to it, which isn't always a good thing, because as you're sort of stretching the fabric along the arms, you can make it longer than you need. So I've got a little bit extra overhanging at the back. So I'll have to speak about that in the tutorial in the book as well, just to sort of allow for that if you've got a sort of stretchy fabric. But I must say it is really nice to work with. It just sort of folds and bends really nicely, and I was sort of really pleased with how, you know, that front bit has gone there. With some sort of cotton fabrics you can really sort of see the joins, and you get a lot of sort of fraying as well wherever you've made cuts. But that just went round really nicely, no fraying, and it just really blends in really nice. So I'm pleased I found this fabric. I'm making a note as well of how much I'm using, because I've never really worked out how much you need for an armchair or for a sofa or anything. But what I've actually done this time is made a note of what I started with, and then I'll see what I've got left at the end, and then I'll know exactly how much fabric you need to make a chair. So that will be quite interesting as well. Okay, so I've got another project that I need to get back to now for the next patron tutorial, so I'm going to leave it at this stage, but really looking forward then to getting back to it, finishing off the arms and then making the cushions. So I'll pop back again when I can with another update. So I'll see you soon. Looks good, doesn't it? Now I'm really sorry, I did mean to check in before this stage, but I just really wanted to get this finished today, so I just put my head down and got on with it, and it's just so much easier just getting on with it than sort of doing it around the camera. But I will just tell you a few differences that I made. So I did only use sponge again for the back, shaped it and then covered the back just with fabric, so how I normally would, with cutting out the corner flaps and then gluing it down. And then this front piece is a piece of card, obviously cut to the same shape, covered with foam, and then the fabric over the top. And then I've done this band around the outside edge. I've done the same on the seat, and to achieve that sort of piped effect, I used cord. So I just wrapped cord into a long piece of fabric. If I just sort of give you an example with this shorter piece here. So cut this to the length that I needed to go either around the cushion or the back cushion. Applied glue just very thinly, glued down the piece of cord, and then pulled over a hem, and then just checked my measurement for where the second piece of cord needed to go, obviously for the thickness of your cushion, and then popped that in and then glued that over. Let that dry off, and then you can glue it around your cushion or your back cushion. And I'm really actually pleased with that effect. And that sort of came to me again in the middle of the night. I think if you sort of go to sleep or you spend all day thinking of how you're going to do something, sometimes these things just come to you overnight. Well, it does with me anyway. I don't know if you experience that as well. But I am really pleased with that. I just think it's got a really nice look to it, hasn't it? Really comfy, a nice size. Again, a couple of things I think I need to think about. First of all, if I'd have thought about using that cord for that piping effect, I would have done that around the arm. So I would have put a piece into each of these longer pieces of fabric that I then fed around these arms, and I think that might have looked nicer. What was the other thing I was going to say? Yeah, where I've sort of pulled the fabric into the centre on the strip that goes around the back, you can just see that line where the fabric joins in there. And obviously you wouldn't see that on a real piece. That would just look, you know, nicely padded. And the same with the arms. I can see a little bit of the sort of fabric in there where it sort of joins together. That's what those lines are. So that's the next thing I want to eliminate. But what I actually got in the post today is this 1mm sheet foam. So you can see how fine it is there, but it's got a really nice sort of spongy effect to it. So I think I've got, how much did I get here? 3 feet, so 13.5 by 39 inches, and it's 1mm wide, and I got that from Amazon. So I think what I'm going to do is just use a piece of that on the inside of the fabric just to stop those edges showing through from the sort of doubled over fabric, and I think I can do that around there as well. And the only thing then, when you're using a foam, and you have to think about this as well when you're doing your seat and putting the fabric around and everything, is to take that thickness into consideration, even though it is only 1mm. So if you used that inside your strip going around your seat or your seat cushion, you would then need to take off a further 1mm from each side, front and back, and you'd have to do that as well with that piece. But I think that would have made all the difference and just given all of these pieces a really nice sort of smooth effect. But I think that's the only thing that I'm not happy with. I really like the overall look of it, love that fabric, love using that corduroy, and this really has been a bit of a practice for the pieces that I'm going to make for book 6, and of course the sofa that I want to make for my own doll's house. But yeah, really pleased with that. So all I actually need to do now, which I forgot, is to add a piece of fabric to the bottom to cover up all the mess under there, and then some feet. So I'll do that now, and then I'll come back and say goodbye. Okay, so that's the feet attached as well, and I've just used a piece of 2.5mm sheet wood, beveled one end, and then attached those so that the bevel is facing sort of outwards at each corner of the chair. And I think those sort of feet give it a really nice modern look as well. So that's my completed chair. Really glad to have got that done today. I'm just going to add a couple of cushions, because every comfy armchair needs a nice comfy cushion on it. And there we are, one project complete. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Not really a tutorial, but just a sort of update on the sort of remake of that sofa. And as I say, this chair, along with a new sofa, will be in the book when it finally comes out. I hope you're enjoying everything that I'm sharing at the moment, whether that's on Patreon or on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much to all of my patrons who make every video possible. And if you're not already a patron but you would like more videos and more content, then please do consider joining me on my Patreon channel, and it would really be appreciated. But as I say, that's it for today. It's Friday now, so if you're watching this on a Friday, have a lovely weekend. And I'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye.